I'm allergic to batshit crazy politics.
I've never seen people that are, well, they're already pretty, pretty hateful people, but they go absolutely batshit insane when you talk about DEI. If you say DEI, there's a hilarious
You
comic
know,
meme.
there's some of them who don't even know what it stands for. They want to hire a qualified person of diversity
Yeah.
instead of hiring an unqualified white guy.
Most people are familiar with Matt Walsh, mostly because of his insanely hateful rhetoric and like basically like he's just a racist. I mean, he's just a racist. But he's a Christian nationalist.
It's disrespectful. But every single time I had to have that discussion in a group, the white guys got pissed.
And I think that's the other thing too, is once you start holding up the mirror, people get really, really uncomfortable.
And there's so
Yeah,
many aspects of that because every single time I see a story about a sexual abuse, whether it's of an adult or of a child, it is not a crossdresser. It is not a trans person. You know, Pluto wasn't discovered until 1930, but I sure am absolutely fucking positive that it was there.
you ever hear people say, "Oh, I don't have a filter"? Take that and just like ramp it up to 1,000 because
I have
that's how they are.
I almost came unchained and like flew just by virtue of my rage when the current director of health pulled off that little thing about, you know, people who have autism will never have a job and never, you know,
It's absolutely bullshit.
diversity, equity, and inclusion programs are critically important in so many different ways. To lump them into, well, you're just hiring black people or women who are not qualified for whatever reason is,
Because they're black people and women. That's the argument.
you know, I was astonished that, you know, the Christian nationalists are mad because the Pope wants to be like Christ. You know, help me understand. Hey there. Welcome to another episode of Hopeful Resistance. My name is Sarah. This is my son Aaron,
Hi.
and we are here pretty much every week to let you join us on our weekly discussion about all things batshit craziness in the United States. You know, as Aaron and I have said multiple times, we have had these talks for weeks way prior to us starting a podcast, and Aaron's brilliant idea was, why aren't we recording these for posterity and to share with other people? So here we are. And not only do we talk about what's going on in the country and sometimes in the world, we also are very focused on making sure. Whew,
Bless you. Bless you again.
I'm allergic to batshit crazy politics.
I know. It's just like as soon as it starts coming up, you're just
I
like, oh,
know. As soon as we start talking about
going to anaphylactic shock right here on the
it, right,
show.
right. She was allergic to batshit crazy politics.
Yeah.
Okay, so in addition to talking about just what's going on in the world, there are plenty of pundits who talk about what's going on. But what Aaron and I really try and focus on is, how do you maintain your sanity? How do you remain hopeful? And specifically, what action items can you take? How do you
Right.
actually resist what's going on, particularly when it feels overwhelming? And today, Aaron's going to actually do a demonstration. So
Yeah.
we're excited about that. So last week, Aaron indulged me that I got to pick what we're talking about today. Normally, Aaron does. And so we're going to specifically focus on action items later. But I believe the first thing we're going to be talking about is diversity, equity, and inclusion. What is it? Actually, how is it impacting people? You had an actual personal experience about how that impacted
Yeah.
you and your family, and I think that's important. So, wherever shall we begin with this? Like so many
So
things.
things, yeah. I think before we started recording, I was talking about how I think anytime this topic comes up that people fundamentally misunderstand the difference between um the diversity and equity inclusion as like a philosophy, as like how it's talked about in psychology, uh, versus how it's talked about, how it's implemented within organizations. And the reason why I think it's really important to talk about those distinctions is because the right wing crazies, the MAGA people, because yeah, the MAGA people, they I mean, I've never seen people that are, well, they're already pretty hateful people, but they go absolutely batshit insane when you talk about DEI. If you say DEI, there's a hilarious
You
comic
know,
meme.
there's some of them who don't even know what it stands for.
Right, they don't they just see DEI, and the first things that pop into their head is the people are being, hired, or they're being put in positions or whatever
Right.
based solely on the color of the skin, their
Gender.
gender,
Yes.
their whatever it
The
is.
whole interesting, I mean, I don't know if this is where you want, I want to interject. The whole interesting
Yeah.
thing about that is the entire program concept of setting it up in businesses was not so that they would hire an unqualified person of diversity, but so they want to hire a qualified person of diversity
Yeah.
instead of hiring an unqualified white guy.
Right. And that's what I find very interesting about it. And I was talking with a friend of mine about this. Um, what's so interesting is I feel like people will stand up, like they will say, "Oh, I disagree with nepotism," and then they will like turn around and be against DEI. And like in my head, I'm like, those two things are like fundamentally at odds with each other. Like that's the
You know
point.
what? This ties in. I mean, so many of the things that we talk about are just so like intricately tied in with one another with these threads woven. You had mentioned about how the right may have some crazy ideas, but they also have some really big mouthpieces.
Yes.
And so those mouthpieces are pushing out the crazy stories. I am not denying that there are some crazy diversity, equity, and inclusion stories,
Yeah.
but that's all they focus on. And so Pete, that's all people know about it. So I'd love, I'm curious and I'd like for you to expand on this concept of diversity, equity, and inclusion as a philosophy versus diversity, equity, and inclusion as a practice.
Yes. So one of I can't talk about this without talking about what the right's most recent push against diversity, equity, and
Oh, I guess
inclusion was, which
I
is
missed this one.
yeah. So this his name is Matt Walsh. Almost if you follow politics at all, if you are familiar with anyone on the Daily Wire, most people are familiar with Matt Walsh, mostly because of his insanely hateful rhetoric and like basically like he's just a racist. I mean, he's just a racist. He's a Christian nationalist. His arguments are bad, and he's just not. To me, he doesn't seem like a very intelligent guy.
So
Um,
would you take a minute and tell me how you really feel about him?
No, no, because that would be the whole rest of the show is me just pulling up clips
I'm
of Matt
like,
Walsh and
"Wow,
being like, you
wow.
see,
No,
you see
we're
how,
not going to
you see
give
how
him one more second of
stupid
airtime.
Matt Walsh is.
All
But he came up with a movie. It's called Am I Racist? Where he goes to like DEI seminars, not for any particular company, just to these DEI seminars to kind of show how crazy the people that are pushing DEI are. And what he fails to understand is that whenever we're going to these seminars that aren't connected to some kind of business element, that we're talking about DEI on like a meta level, right, or a macro level. We're talking about DEI as like on a grander scale of things. We're
like
talking about it
50,000 foot,
philosophically.
50,000 foot level.
Right, right. We're talking, yeah. And so whenever he goes to these things, it's really easy for someone who doesn't understand what the differences are for them to watch these videos and be like, wow, these people are crazy. Like the people in the seminars with him are these people are crazy because of some of the things that they talk about, which are uncomfortable, especially if you're a white person. The things that they talk about. And then he uses those, like what you're talking about. He uses this as an example of, see, this is why DEI is bad.
Oh,
Um,
okay.
and so whenever we talk about um, that, like it on that macro scale, this philosophical scale of what is diversity, equity, and inclusion, and how does it affect people, it can make people uncomfortable, right? Because we're talking about something that's tough to talk about, and if something's easy to talk about,
Can you give
everybody's
an
comfortable.
example of what? Because perhaps because as a behaviorist and working with companies on some of these aspects, I am unclear as to perhaps what would be uncomfortable.
So this is I don't want to like tiptoe around it, but like I'm a a straight presenting white guy. So for me, I'm treated pretty well, just in general in life. um,
We're white.
and
We've
yeah,
said
I
this
don't want to be all sanctimonious
heterosexual.
about it,
Yeah.
but there are people of different genders or races that whenever they've gone around in their life, they've encountered the bigotry based on that aspect of their life, and a lot of those
The
seminars,
sexual aspect,
yeah, the sexual aspect or
gender aspect.
well, the gender or the race, right? So, like, if
Okay,
there's
okay,
black
okay.
people experience racism in their life, and then a lot of these seminars, they sit down and they talk about the racism that they experienced. And so,
Okay,
first off,
so can we pause?
go
I
ahead.
want to make sure I'm following.
Mhm.
One of the seminars that I used to give to extremely large companies was about unconscious biases.
Right,
And we would talk about things like names. And for instance, you might have a name that is extremely difficult for me to pronounce, or it seems weird. And I'm used to Johns and Joes and Janes, and you come in with a long name with a lot of consonants together, or things are not in the normal order that I would expect. It's hard for me to say. And so then I say, well, can I just call you Joe? That's an
right.
unconscious bias. It is also a microaggression. It's disrespectful. But every single time I had to have that discussion in a group, the white guys got pissed.
Yeah, and I think that that's more or less what I'm talking about,
Okay,
right?
okay. The
And
philosophical thing that just because it makes you uncomfortable or it's difficult to,
yes, and I always take these things from the angle of respect, because like we if we want to talk about we don't want to go too pivot too hard, but like whenever you and I are always talking about like virtual signaling and tone policing and purity testing, and things like microaggressions are used as tools to like further implement that, but without recognizing that the underlying issue of that type of behavior is someone is doing it out of disrespect, right? Like if someone is microaggressing you to be disrespectful, I feel like
that's kind of a different thing. Uh,
right.
it's also, and one of the other thing is we go back to diversity, equity, and inclusion as an opportunity to recognize your own ignorance, because every single time that I would do these seminars and I would pull up before I would start talking about name biases and
Right.
microaggressions, I would pull up the names of sports players that had freaky names. And I
Yeah.
would ask, because most of the time I was working with a bunch of white guys, right?
Right.
So I would ask them, well, what's this name? And I mean, they're not easy names, and they're cranking those names out. And then I would pull up a diverse name.
Yeah.
Dead silence. Dead silence.
And I think that's the other thing too, is once you start holding up the mirror, people get really, really uncomfortable.
That's where I'm going with this, that the uncomfortable. Or I think why these Christians get so intensely, bizarrely paranoid about what's in your pants and what your preference is about what's in other people's pants, because it makes them uncomfortable.
Right.
And so,
Why can't we just be normal? Right.
yeah, well, wouldn't that be nice? And there's so
Yeah.
many aspects of that, because every single time I see a story about a sexual abuse, whether it's of an adult or of a child, it is not a crossdresser. It is not a trans person. It is not a gay person. It's a straight presenting
Yeah,
white
and it's
guy.
usually worse. It's usually a close family member or someone that in a trusted position,
It's in trusted position. It's
statistically, every time.
statistically. The point being, I think what I saw diversity, equity, and inclusion at the theoretical level was helping people understand the emotional intelligence aspect of, just because you're uncomfortable with this person's, perhaps they have a disability, they're blind, they they can't walk for whatever reason. They can't, they've had a stroke and they can't speak clearly. Whatever, fill in the blank for whatever their disability is. You feel uncomfortable. So, of course, we don't want to go out of our way and have those
Right.
people because they feel uncomfortable.
Right. And so that is,
So
I
you're
guess,
talking the theoretical level is just emotionally how we deal with that.
yes, yeah, and it's further than that as well, I think, because it's about acknowledging the reality that regardless of your your skin color, your gender expression, your sexuality, whatever, everyone lives different lives. We all, and that's a part of
Wait,
creating diversity. I know it's
what?
I had a debate with someone, I think it was over threads about like acknowledging the fact that like this, because one of the arguments that they like to use is that, oh, DEI is racist because, oh, you're saying that black people are different. I'm like, I'm saying that that all of us have different lived experiences, and that by being diverse and bringing people together, you get a lot of different experiences, and it
So
helps you create.
definitely, I want to address that from a business perspective because
Yeah, that's what I like was trying to segue to. But go, yeah,
oh, sorry.
go ahead. No, it's
But
okay.
one of the things, and again, you can bring up poor examples. It's like I tell people, I don't bring up Westboro Baptist Church as an example of Christians. And you shouldn't bring up these weird off the wall diversity, equity, and inclusion programs that are not normal or typical or practical or even like where did they come up with this, right? You're pulling the worst of the worst.
Yeah, and for sorry, for people that aren't familiar with Westboro Baptist Church, uh, just as an example of the crazy things that they protest veteran funerals with signs saying, God had him killed because America allows gay people to get married." Like that's what they
Absolutely,
do. So
absolutely.
just so we understand how fucking
God hates
crazy.
gays. I mean, they have the most hateful
Yes.
rhetoric. They're right up there with MAGA hate.
Yeah. So,
Um, but
but
from a
carry on.
from a business perspective, every single company that I ever worked with, and you can look up statistics, Harvard and Stanford, they all do studies on diversity, equity, and inclusion programs. Those companies outperform other companies. Is it because they have, more black people working or more disabled people? No, it's because of your macro concept that they have learned to embrace other perspectives. They have
Yes.
learned to work with other people that aren't like them, who may have different ideas, different ways of solving things. It, the concept of diversity, equity, and inclusion isn't that I'm going to hire more black people or more white people or more.
And we're not trying to make quotas.
It isn't
That
about
I hear that all the
quota.
time.
It is about making sure that we have a varied group of people who are in this company or in this organization who are problem solving,
That are
uh,
qualified. That
that are qualified for the
yes.
position. I mean, it should go without saying that they have to be
Right.
qualified.
Yeah.
And
I
I
just
can
like that. I always like to harp on it because that's the thing that they're all that MAGA or anyone that's against DI is generally doing. They're trying to say that, oh, you're hiring someone because they're, a black
And if we
woman.
could just pause and look at every single cabinet member of the current talk
Yeah.
about qualifications.
Yeah.
So the other thing I wanted to bring up about diversity, equity, and inclusion programs is that it is such a ignorant concept to think that it only has to do with who you hire. Diversity, equity, and inclusion programs also include employee resource groups. They work on pay equity for gender, equity, pay. They also, and the thing that just absolutely drives me nuts, this is also accessibility considerations. This is about the reason we have ADA compliance bathrooms is because
Right.
diversity, equity, and inclusion, so that your fucking wheelchair can get into
The reason why there's ramps on
reason
in
that there's
almost every location.
the reason that we now have more ergonomic chairs and ergonomic keyboards, and the reason that some people have standing desks, and I mean
It's
every
so it's no, it's so funny because this is exactly what me and my friend were talking about. People just fucking forgot. Either they forgot or they just never knew what it was like before we implemented these things. And without having any concept of like the before, we only see the current, and you hear, you know, the stories and the bad stories and the negative rhetoric, and then you're like, this needs to go. Why did we ever do this? And it's like, bro, there was a really good reason.
I think the other thing is that we, I, so many
So
things.
many things.
I do believe quite passionately that it's a lack of emotional intelligence that has gotten us here. People, as a culture, as a country, we lack in general the emotional intelligence to check ourselves that when I feel uncomfortable, it must be bad. We actually, I mean, personally, I've had a friendship breakup over the fact that I brought a piece of artwork into our home, and the people that used to come over to our house quite regularly, it made them uncomfortable because they had never seen anything from another country that was like this. And so, oh, it must be evil. Okay.
Oh.
Yeah. And um it was a deal breaker for our friendship, and it just reminded me that there are a lot of people who are in their fields. If I feel uncomfortable because I can't say your name, instead of me training myself to say your name, I'm going to ask you to change your fucking name to something that makes me easier for me to say.
Yeah.
But
And
again,
what's
also
interesting too is people that have hard to say names, sometimes they'll come to you and they'll say, "Oh yeah, you can call me
and they do
Josh."
that. They absolutely do that, and I have always encouraged them not to do that,
Right.
because basically what they're doing is making themselves smaller. But I also understand the dynamics of, you have to work with people, and sometimes you have to work with them where they are. Another aspect of diversity, equity, and inclusion that is really on the rise, or was on the rise before the current administration, is dealing with neurodiverse people. We've had a guest or two on the show that have some neurospicy stuff.
Yeah.
Certainly, you and I have our share of ADD, ADHD, and one of the other things is autism and Asperger's. These are neuro. Uh, I want to say neurospicy, and that's not what I mean to say. Neurodiverse um, um, ways of thinking that are also part of diversity, equity, and inclusion programs.
Yeah.
And this is
Um,
the workplace and also in the community.
well, I also feel like, and I know we're about to segue into the next thing.
And next,
Um, so I am quite intimate with how things like autism. We don't say autism or Asperger's anymore. Not it's now just called the spectrum for those who don't know.
the
It's
spectrum,
just
that's
it's
good to
just
know.
the spectrum. I don't
So
remember
let me
when.
repeat that. So we say uh, he's on the spectrum or she's on the spectrum.
Yes.
We word that.
And yeah, and I think it's as the research has come further, that's why they did away with classifications like Asperger's and autism and just started calling it the spectrum, is because I mean those disabilities tend to be, I mean they're related in the way that they affect people. And I also think it's worth noting because I think a lot of people, whenever they hear those, they automatically kind of think um, probably just the worst type of it, right? Because you have some people that are very heavy on the spectrum and they have very, very extreme sensory issues and they have all kinds of, but they're like all kinds of what I would call like neurodiverse
Right.
tics or, right.
I think we should, for anyone who's not familiar, when we talk about sensory issues, there are children and adults can't stand noises, can't stand feels, can't stand certain smells, can't stand too much or too little light.
Yes.
Every aspect of their senses is in hyperdrive. I would also say one of the things that I want to point out is that I don't believe that being on the spectrum means that your brain functions less than, that you have a
That's
mental deficiency. I don't want to use the R word, which I know a lot of people You
We
could
don't use that anymore. I use that. I messed up, not gonna lie. I messed up and used that in a parent teacher conference with Elizabeth one time. This
uh,
was okay, in my defense, this was like I want to say 4 or 5 years ago. And
okay, okay, better.
Elizabeth's like, that doesn't make it better. But I was just trying to, I'm not trying to justify it. Anyway, Elizabeth was like, after
You
the
give
meeting,
me
she
context.
goes, you can't say that. And I was like, well, I used it
Well, and
in
let
like a
me say this.
scientific way. And she goes, yeah, but they don't say that anymore.
Well, and I would like to say, I'm going to say it, but I'm going to give it context. When the word mentally retarded first was used, it wasn't used the way in the hateful way that it is now.
Right.
The word retarded literally meant like slower, like
Yeah.
it, the
Mentally deficient.
like a fire retardant. It is something that is slowing down this other thing.
Right.
The reason we don't say that anymore is because of diversity, equity, and inclusion, because to be inclusive, we don't want to say something that is disparaging about the other person's disability or difference in functioning. I don't even know that I would say being on the spectrum is a disability.
I certainly
I
wouldn't say it
I
is.
think it's like the next level of where the human brain may be going. I don't.
Yeah,
Anyway,
well, what time will tell because we're not, as far as evolution goes, just in general, you'll, it's not a sudden change. That's a whole other topic, but like evolution is like a, thousands of years
sure.
thing that happens. And so it occurs slowly over time. And so that's
And I would
just
also
another
like
part
to
of it.
point out that we've only started discovering or identifying being on the spectrum in the last 20 or 30 years, but that doesn't mean that it wasn't happening before then.
Yes, certainly.
Remind people, okay, Pluto wasn't discovered until 1930, but I sure am absolutely fucking positive that it was
It
there.
was there. Yeah. Yeah. Just I pulled it up real quick. So the APA, that's the American Psychiatric Association, they took Asperger's syndrome out of publication in 2013. And
Well,
that was, I think that was whenever they changed it to the broader diagnosis, which is now just called autism spectrum disorder, which is what you and I would refer to as the spectrum. Um, and so about what you were saying, people on the spectrum and their mental facilities. My life, my experiences have taught me certainly that you know what, I'm beating around the bush. I have two children in my that are on the spectrum. One of them is my oldest son. I'm not going to say his name, but he turns 16 this year, and he is very frustrating. Not because he's on the spectrum, but because he's a 16-year-old boy. Um,
yes, I used to have a
I
couple,
know.
and I can tell
But
you that
but
testosterone sure does make them
yes.
pretty.
But more than that, he makes me incredibly proud constantly nonstop with the things that he does. Um, and in the experiences of what we learned, because whenever he was initially diagnosed on the spectrum, I was still in the military, and there were great resources and therapy and stuff to kind of help him cope with it. And you learn a lot about it. I'm not saying by any means that I'm a profession, but as a parent, we had to go and
Okay, you and
be
Elizabeth,
taught.
though, you guys are like on the high end of the kudos chart in my mind because you have done so much work to be sure that you are parenting them well and fully. And I don't want to say correctly because that implies there's only one way to do it, but you certainly want to be the best parent you can with the neurodiversity that both of your children have.
Yes. And to put it simply, it's more of a social disorder than anything.
Absolutely.
Um, he does
Absolutely.
they don't pick up on emotional cues. They don't pick up on, you ever hear people say, oh, I don't have a filter. Take that and just like ramp it up to 1,000 because
I have
that's how they are. They have no concept of like
I had
proper
some
social
I actually
interactions.
had a few clients who were back when they called it Asperger's. That's how they had been identified by
Yeah.
their mental health professional. They were on the spectrum, no filter. They couldn't, I mean, I think even in my own family, I have a sister who sarcasm, she's like, I don't even know what you
It
said to me.
yeah.
And so I think we're all, we all have different ways of perceiving things, but I do want to segue this into um in the realm of diversity, equity, and inclusion programs, young people and adults have access to and can benefit from programs that help them work. I almost came unchained and like flew just by virtue of my rage when the current director of health pulled off that little thing about, people who have autism will never have a job and never,
It's absolutely bullshit. And I think what's crazy is that he'll stand up on stage and he'll say that while working for an administration that is actively dismantling the programs that would enable people. Like I know, but you know how I always say it's like they're almost full circle. It's like if they could just come around and
It's
connect
like
it,
one
then
more step. But if
yeah. But
if I
it's
make
like,
that other step, then that means I'm gonna have to look back and say, oh,
ooh, I was wrong about all those things. So
like him and the measles, it took what, two thousand kids who have died from measles in 2025 for him to say, oh, you should probably get the measles vaccine.
that honestly, the other thing about that is that goes back to the thing I was saying before. It's like people just fucking forgot how bad shit was. And they were just like, oh yeah, that's right. There was like a huge measles epidemic that killed a bunch of people.
Yeah.
That's why we developed a vaccine.
Like, what's that phrase? Just go to the cemetery and you'll see all these children who died, and
Yeah.
then in the 50s or 40s,
Yeah.
40s and 50s, they quit dying so much, and oh, you could, yeah. But
Connecting dots is hard.
I want to just spend a minute giving a shout out to the people in the city of Mansfield, Texas.
Yes. So my
You tell
son,
that story.
yeah, so my son was because he's on the spectrum, he was allowed to join a program that I want to say that it was just the funding came from federal funding, federal education funding, and basically that enabled them to work with Goodwill on what's called a SEAL program, which allows kids, teenagers that are on the spectrum to do summer jobs. It was super. We were super excited. He was super excited. He's again, actually, anyway, he really wants to work, even at his age. He wants to go get a job and he wants to work. He's doing JROTC. I mean, he's all about this stuff. And so I say we, my wife, spent a great deal of time making sure all the paperwork was done, making sure that he went and got his drug testing, and we had everything lined up and everything was set. And then they were supposed to send out packets so that way we would know when he would start his job training. And about 2 weeks, I think before we were supposed to get I don't know if it's when we were supposed to get the packet or when he was supposed to start job training. And we'd already been told, like, yeah, you're good. He's in the program. Just wait. They basically sent an email out to everyone and we're like, hey, we're canceling this program.
And
Like,
say
we're
why,
not doing it.
because I think that's important.
The email is very the tactful. So I'll say it how they said it. They just said due to I think they did due to the mix up of current federal funding for educational programs, we have to cancel this program. Um, and I think they said this year. Obviously, we'll see where that goes. And for anyone who's not familiar with the Department of Education, they are the ones that handle the funding for special education programs. Um, and so anyway, so the program's canceled. We were very, very upset. I think I put a post out on Threads about it. I think I put a post on Facebook about it. I was pretty angry.
You and I were messaging, and you and Elizabeth were just, and
I was
justifiably so. And I mean, the super summary here is you had a child who has autism who was going to be in a program to help him develop more skills to have, more better social interaction, be a good employee, blah blah blah. And because of the current administration, both, I think, federally and probably in Texas as well,
oh,
the
certainly in Texas.
the
We just
funding was cut. two
Yeah.
weeks before the program
They
started.
just passed the voucher program here.
Yeah, yeah.
Really
Okay.
don't have to go down that
But
hole.
yeah, that's a whole nother, that's in so many things.
Hmm.
But what we did was we reached out to some folks in the area, and I'm not going to name them at this point, but I would like to probably um, perhaps have them on later on
Yeah.
the show to talk about how their form of resistance was to gather the community together and raise enough money to fund him, my grandson, your child, to do this program, uh, not just for the initial month that he was going to do it, but he's going to do it for 10 weeks. The point of it being, this is a privilege of ours because we're connected, well connected in the community. Even though I'm not in the Texas area now, they're good people who know
Yeah.
us, who are
It's
doing
about it's the form of resistance and that it's a community that came together that saw
community that came
a
together.
just an injustice and came together.
It did. It also highlights for me how many other kids don't have those resources.
Right.
And so diversity, equity, and inclusion programs are critically important in so many different ways. And to lump them into, well, you're just hiring Black people or women who are not qualified for whatever reason is,
Because they're black people and women. That's the argument.
yeah, is just stupid. So, um, we are going to make a shift because of the kind of crazy shit that's going on. We want to remind you all about how important it is to resist. For me, uh, I do many things. Some of them are difficult for me to do because I'm traveling outside of the country, but I still resist in the ways that make sense for me. And Aaron is going to demonstrate something we talk about all the time. We harp on like the big five. So there's an app called Five Calls, and he's going to demonstrate how that works. There's another app called ResistBot. These two apps help you find your representative, contact your representative. It actually makes a phone call through the app. You pick your topic. It gives you a little script for whatever topic you have chosen.
If you need it.
Hmm, of
If you need it. So whenever I call, admittedly I don't use the script, but
course not. But for people who might feel anxious about not knowing
yeah.
what to say, they can pick a script
Yeah.
and it will actually show the script while they're on the call.
Yeah, and you can a lot of the times you can tell them yeah, I'm contacting through five calls, so I'm just going to read this, and they'll say, "Okay." And then you just get to sit there and read it.
Yeah. So those are two apps that we talk about a lot. I am after you make the call, I'm gonna do our screen share thing again.
Okay.
I'm gonna pull up the card campaign, uh Indivisible and 5051.
Okay.
You want to take over and tell them what you're going to do?
Yeah, so I admittedly have not made any calls today because it's Mother's Day. I wanted to hang out with my wife. Um, Shame me all you want. I know some of you guys are fantastic about making your five calls every day, and I
Hey,
admire you on your tenacity.
we do the best we can.
Yes.
Anybody who shames you has just not got enough.
Yeah. That's the purity testing we're always talking
That
about.
purity testing.
So five calls. I'm gonna try and like hold it up. You can see it there in the bottom. The
Well, if you
bottom.
like, not in front of your little ring light.
Oh yeah, I guess I got
Yeah.
my ring light.
Okay.
I don't know how to do this more effectively, but you can see.
Yeah.
Is that it right there? I
Yeah.
hope so.
Yeah.
It's
But
the other
it's
side.
still too close.
Whatever. Okay, so it's fine. So I got five calls. It's installed, and I should have.
I can see it better there.
Okay, let's do that. So I got five calls, and it just opens up. I think whenever it initially opens up, I want to say that it probably I might just open up here, because I had it open already. And then you can see it literally just has topics on topics on topics on topics on topics.
Can you
Um,
do a search for topics?
yes, you can. So I know that the last time I
Somebody
called,
somebody posted on Threads that it was just so hard to use because they they couldn't find basically the general topic they wanted to
Yeah. So
up a
you can see
search.
back whenever there was a concern about the Veterans Health Administration, I called. And so yeah, you can search if there's any
Okay,
kinds of issues that you
okay.
have. Um, and so basically, and also I just learned this today because I actually didn't know this. It actually includes your governors. So depending on where you live,
So you could call your,
um, yeah, it actually lets you call your governor's office.
so you can
I
call,
didn't know that.
I didn't either. So you
Yeah.
can call your
So
representatives, although in Texas calling your governor is pointless, but
yeah,
it's at least, here's the thing for anybody who's watching that is interested in making the phone calls. When you email, or I think even when you send a letter, they don't log those
the
right.
same way.
Yeah, they don't log them the same way. Phone calls get logged, and it is one of the benchmarks that they use to gauge what their constituents care about.
Right. And then the other thing, the other side of it too, is that whenever you pick a thing, it does give you a breakdown with links on what's what the issue is about.
So you
Um
can educate yourself before you even call.
yes. So for me, I live in Texas and I live in the 5th district.
If you
I
didn't
always forget.
know, would it help you find your representative?
So whenever you set up the app initially, it does have you put your
Like your
location.
address and phone
Yeah,
numbers?
so you can see. I don't know if you can see because it's really bright.
No.
So on this page, this is update location. It says we'll figure out who you need to call, and then you can either have it use your location, like your phone's location. And if you can't see it, I'll just talk about it. Or you can just put in if you're uncomfortable with it having your exact location, you can just put in your zip code, and then it will, based off that, it'll find your people.
Nice.
Um, well,
Because I
so
think that's the other thing. I think people want to make phone calls, but the myriad reasons that keep them is I don't know who my guy, I don't know who my person is,
right,
and I don't know their numbers, and then I don't know what to say when I call. So
right,
this app actually, I think ResistBot operates pretty much the same way.
yes.
It it gives you what you need to make the phone call. So you're getting ready to make the phone call. How does that work?
Yeah, so once you pick your topic, and again, if you can't see it, I'll just walk through this. So like I chose oppose funding cuts to NPR and PBS on mine. It gives the explanation on like what they're talking about doing. I'm not going to read all of it. It's a big long text, and if you download the app, you can read it yourself. And then at the very bottom, it gives you your list of representatives. And it's typically both your state senators and then your House rep.
So
Um,
when they say five calls, the point of it being called five calls is they want you to make five calls every day. And that would be to your representatives about the topics that you care about, or your governor or your mayor. I mean, they want you to be calling your elected representatives to talk about the things that you care about.
yes. And so then once you're at the bottom of the page and it lists all your representatives, you just click on one of them. So I generally call mine. My representative's name is Roger Williams. Um, and I follow him on Facebook. And I really don't like Mr. Williams that much. He's, well, you know what? I won't be nice. He's a party hack who doesn't give a crap about anything but serving the MAGA movement. So he's a very frustrating person.
Have you ever
Um,
actually talked to him?
no, never, ever have I ever talked to him. Um, I keep trying to find out when he's going to town hall to sign up for his newsletter, et cetera, et cetera. He was in town recently for a Chamber of Commerce meeting, but I didn't see a newsletter broadcast about it, so I don't think it was I don't think it was a like open event.
Like, I know it not open to the public.
Um,
A single
and
plant only.
Yeah, well, and I mean, I could have missed it. I like give, even though I don't like him and I don't like what he's doing in this country, I like to give out fair grace, which is if he did send out a newsletter and I missed it, I'll take some onus on that. But every time I call and ask about if when are we going to have a town hall, we're told the congressman doesn't have a town hall planned at this
Of
time.
course, you know as well as I do, Republicans are not doing town halls.
Mm. And he's probably not definitely not going to do one here because the
No,
area of
Fort
Texas that
Worth,
I live in
Worth
is
would not.
fortunately super blue, but it
Yeah,
also means it's gerrymandered to hell. So,
yeah. Okay,
Um,
so
okay,
let's not run out of time. So
yeah, sorry.
no, that's okay. There's so
What's
many things.
I hope you can. I probably can't see this because the screen's all white. This literally just says his name, and it has a phone number to the DC office, and it even has a link to call the local office. So if I want to call the local office, I can. And it says why you're calling this office. This is your representative in the House. Robert Williams is a Republican from Texas. And then it says your script. So and then it has the script and the
So if
reason
you
why.
like, if you didn't feel comfortable just speaking extemporaneously, you could dial that number, the screen still stays up, and you could just read the script.
Yes.
Nice.
And the reason why, and I we can go the sorry at the bottom it just says unavailable, which would be I've only had this happen once. Would it be where somebody picked up the phone and just hung up?
Oh,
No voicemail. You don't know who you talked to. You got nothing. Okay. Again, not with Mr. Williams' office. I think it was when I tried to call one of my senators and it's only happened one time. Um, and for all I know, I don't know. Uh, the the other times aren't here is if you left a voicemail or if you made contact, and that's just I think because the app is trying to gather how effective it
they
is.
do, and they Five
Yes,
Calls is really, really good about tracking the number of people. I mean, there are right now 2,000 calls a day going into some of these offices. So
yes, and for some people that might make you uncomfortable. You don't have to push anything. You don't even have to read the script. You can come in here and you can click this and it'll and make the call and you can just say whatever you want. I
which
mean,
is what you're getting ready to do.
yes. So sorry. So push the button. You hit the call. I'm gonna put it on speaker.
Okay, sure. And we'll be quiet.
Congressman Roger Williams. I'm honored to be your congressman for the 25th District of Texas.
25th.
And I look forward to working with you. And always remember, may God bless America. And also, God bless the greatest state, Texas.
Better.
Yeah. Hi, Mr. Williams. My name is Aaron Minchall. I live in Texas. My address is, and I am a constituent of yours. I am calling to demand that you oppose any cuts to the Corporation of Public Broadcasting, including Trump's demand to cut funding for NPR and PBS. Money for NPR and PBS is well spent on valuable news, information, and educational programming for the American public, especially in the rural and undeserved areas. Thank you for your time and consideration. And then I just hang up.
Okay. Easy
And
peasy.
then and then because I left a voicemail because it's Sunday, I just click leave voicemail, left voicemail, and then it gives me a little check mark. You called them.
And
And
see,
then
this
go
to
ahead.
me is like super I tried because of our traveling and making phone calls through an app. Sometimes it doesn't work here, although I may download it and try it again. I like that.
Yeah. Yeah, and it's you can see it giving you the script. Um
And you could say, you don't have to say exactly, like you could say instead of demand, if that's too forceful for you, you could say, I'm calling to ask you to seriously consider
yeah,
support. I mean, the script is there to overcome your
yeah, to
nerve.
guide you.
I know some
Yes.
people who make these phone calls and they're like, my voice was shaking. I know I sounded like an idiot. So if you're anxious about what to say, the app literally does everything for you.
Well, and I have to imagine, like realistically, I have to imagine that the aides and people that are taking your calls have probably been briefed about these apps and about how these things work. So I know that there has been a time where I called and was like, especially when I was first calling, where I was like, I'm using the Five Calls app. I'm just going to read it. I have a script. I'm going to read it. And they're like, okay. And then you just read it.
See, that's easier for them because
Yeah.
they know, first of all, those scripts keep you on target. They keep you from, cussing them out. They're probably like, great, read the script. That's probably a
Yeah.
lot less volatile than you calling and telling me, some poor intern that, I'm an idiot.
Yeah, I would say if you do call, just remember that the people that are taking your calls are whether they do or don't support your congressman. I don't feel like that matters. They're just doing a job. They're doing a job that they're paid to do. And if they support him, you don't
It's
know.
really, it's like if you hate Chick-fil-A, you can't be mad at the kid who's working the drive-through, right?
Right. It's
Just
just
trying to
that's
make.
unreasonable. That's unreasonable anger. And if you think about it, it makes you look bad.
Well,
makes what you're trying to do look bad.
anytime that we lose our shit and insult people or we speak in ugly ways, we really do lose credibility. So
Yes.
what I'm going to do now, so that was one thing that you can do. I'm going to, oh gosh, what am I scared? Okay, I think I'm going to share my whole screen. So let's see how this works. Okay, we're going to get rid of Zoom, all this. Hopefully I'm not going to hang us up. Okay, so now what I'm going to do is I'm going to pull up um, card campaign. Hang on, card campaign. So this is a super awesome thing. A card campaign gives you different cards that you print out. And the point of it is, let's say you're going to get your oil changed and you are really you're really passionate about the Save Act. So you can click on this and you can print these little cards and then leave them behind there. I call them leave behinds. But they also do different things where you can print out uh, this kind of a thing that you can mail. This is a postcard that you can mail to your elected representative. And it says pretty much what you just said. It says, we hired you, we can fire you. But it's like, we need you to speak up to defend our fundamental rights. We need you. So this particular website gives you these kind of resources. If you don't really want to talk to anybody, you can print these out and mail them. You can print these out and leave them somewhere, like you leave them at the dentist office or the doctor's office or in a restaurant or whatever. They're called leave behinds.
I do have a small spoiler too for five calls. Most representative offices close at 7 p.m. on
Oh,
the East
so
Coast.
call it
So
701.
yeah, so if you call after hours, you'll always go to voicemail.
Always
The
go to voicemail.
the important thing to remember for voicemail is that they do need your name and your address,
Yeah.
um, because they're not able to verify you through your phone number whenever like
Right.
you would if they answered. They need to know that you're actually a constituent. So just
I
something
think
to think
that's
about.
great. Now, this particular website is called Indivisible.
I love
Now, it
this website.
offers online resources, but it also encourages you to meet in your community. So you can see where it's got this little thing where you can find a local group, a local event, you can create a group. Um, it also talks about the different kinds of actions that you can take. There's a guide, and then like if you click on take action now, it's click here to tell your attorney general what, what you think about these things. So these are resources. If you're feeling helpless and you're like, I don't know how to resist, I don't know what to do.
I don't know where to start.
I don't know where to start. I love this section. This particular section has virtual trainings and calls that you can jump on a phone call that's like this group call where you can hear the different organizers talk about what they're doing. If you have a resource library here, which also has all kind of cool things about materials. It tells you how to manage your group. There's that word inclusive.
Oh man.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah.
So this is a great, and we have links to these on our show description page. And then my 5501.
Yes.
Okay, so this is the other one. Okay, wait. Why are we going to Facebook? 50.
It's all right. You can just edit all this
Oh,
out.
50. I think it's 50,
There
51.
we go.
Sorry. There we go. So the goal is
I was about to pull up my my bookmark to help you.
like,
No, yeah, it's all
why
right.
am I on Facebook right now? So for instance, June 14th, there's an event called the No Kings event, and they're having it that day. And I'm going to say this, if you are working to resist, please just stop talking about Trump's parade. He can completely justify it because it's a 250th birthday of the Army Flag Day. I mean, the fact that he's co-opting it because of his birthday and he's the king and blah blah blah, whatever. Again, credibility is important, and fighting the fights that need to be fought are also important. And I think it disgusts me that, you know, that's happening, but I'm frankly more concerned about our constitutional adherence to constitutional laws and the rule of law. So anyway,
Yeah.
back to what we're talking about. So you can click on this and see different events. You can search for events in your area. You can host an event. You can find a group in your area that hosts these 501 events. So these are just some of the resources that you can access that we think are super important, super helpful. It, you can't do everything. None of us can, but you can do something. And there will be plenty of people who say it's not enough or it's not right. Aaron and I did a whole show about the cannibal effect. And, as you say, that virtue signaling, the purity signaling,
Yeah,
look, we just elect
the
Pope from America who tends to, be more left than anything, and they're still finding
mhm.
stuff wrong with him. So, I mean, if they're
Yeah,
the freaking Pope who doesn't like JD Vance and Trump,
right.
you're never going to do it.
Yeah. So the three terms that I talk about are virtue signaling, tone policing, and purity testing.
I got to write that down.
Yeah.
Well, I would if oh, there it is.
Yeah,
Virtue
your pen.
signaling. I was going to say I would
Yeah.
write it down if my pen worked. Tone policing. Okay, so let me tell you, this did not have tone policing, and what was the other one? Purity.
Purity testing. Purity testing is probably the worst of them,
Well,
but
I don't know
the
about that because let me say, I had two instances this week where actually someone I knew, our friend John, who I had posted about the Pope, and I was astonished that, the Christian nationalists are mad because the Pope wants to be like Christ. Help me understand
yeah,
that.
walk me down the logic here.
So let's talk about tone policing. He said, "Well, you framed it in such a way, it's really hard for me to answer." And to me, that's tone policing because you're
Oh
reading what
yeah,
I've written and using the way I've written it as an excuse not to engage.
right.
And then another thing was I had asked someone a question. They said, "Well, should I do this or this?" And I answered the question with a question because people were answering her, and the majority were saying, "You need to do this, you need to do A."
Yeah.
And she argued about why A wouldn't work. And so I came back and said, "Why are you asking? You gave us two choices. The overwhelming response is you should do A, but you're saying no. Is there a third choice that we've missed here?" And some
Yeah.
guy just out of the blue, he and I actually ended up connecting on social media because we talked through it. But he was tone policing, like, well, you're thinking this and you're thinking that. So you do have to watch out. But back to action items. These things that we've showed you are ways that you can decide, am I a protester? Okay, if you are, then the 50-51 is what you need to do. Do I have the means to print out all these things? And do I feel comfortable leaving them around? Well, then the card campaign is for you. Do I want to make all these phone calls? And like Aaron said, 701, get on that phone and, do your 5 calls, before 7 in the morning or after 7 at night. There's
Yeah.
the phone.
Yeah. Because I can understand like getting on a phone call with someone about it can be
Particularly if
intimidating.
it's your first time.
Yeah.
So these are ways. If you have other ways that we've missed, please let us know. Other than that, Aaron, I've made a ton of notes here, but I don't think we have missed anything we were going to talk about.
No, I don't think so. And I mean, I'm glad we talked about this today. Um, I know I guess what I will say, I know we didn't deep dive into what those, like the entirety of those programs are. Because
Diversity, equity, and inclusion.
yeah, and what I mean is,
We, we could do another one.
yeah,
What would
and
be
I'm
our
not,
point?
huh?
What would be our point?
Yeah, that's what I mean. Like, I don't know that we need to, and especially because the programs are different for each company. What I would say though on that is if you work for a company that has a DEI program, those policies will you can find them on your company website. Like I know I can find them on mine.
You know what
There
I find
are,
so interesting that it is literally considered an act of resistance for the companies in the United States to have said, no, we're going to keep our
no, we're keeping ours.
diversity. I mean, Costco, Target lost, I think it was $15 billion, 15 billion.
Yeah, I know we were waiting for people were waiting for that quarterly report to come out
I
because
know. I've got to find out how
all
much
they had was the foot traffic loss, but nobody actually got to see.
lose over DEI. I didn't even have to finish typing it. Target, okay. Target experienced a significant financial hit after discontinuing its DEI initiatives, losing, are you ready? 12.4 billion in market value. The
Oof.
loss was accompanied by a substantial drop in stock price, over $27 a share, and a noticeable decline in sales. The company also saw a drop in foot traffic, which with one source reporting an 11% drop in customer visits. Okay. How much did Costco gain because of DEI? Because, okay, here we go. Uh, Costco experienced a notable increase of 7.7 million shopper visits and 36% increase in their stock. And I don't see a dollar amount.
And I want to I think it's important for people that might be watching this and going, well, why does it matter? Because this is demonstration of resistance, of resistance working.
Well, and I mean, Tesla, although it hasn't gotten down as low as protesters and resistors want, Tesla has lost a ton of money because
Yeah.
of protesting, boycotts, that kind of thing.
I mean,
Resist
we had a billionaire crying on TV because people were being they were being really mean
so
to him.
mean to me. Um, so
Shirley,
here's the thing, resistance is what you can do. What can you do? Can you bake cookies for the local protesters? Can you help make signs? There is no right way, and there is no wrong way to resist. You have to say, what are my resources? What's my capacity? What kind of mental load can I take on? But do something. That, I mean, this is part of the reason Aaron and I started recording the podcast,
yeah,
because this is something we want to look back and say, at least we tried to have our voices.
yes,
I have to know what you're watching on your screen.
threads.
What?
I have threads up.
Oh, Threads. Oh,
Yeah,
Ariel. I love Ariella. Go to Ariella.
yeah, yeah. I was looking at that, and then some other people were.
Okay. And I will say, if you're a resistor and you are not on Threads, you need to be. Go to Threads. It is a sister company of Instagram. So if you're on Instagram, you actually already have a reserved spot on Threads.
Yeah,
Instagram, I is a dud for me, but boy howdy, Threads is, my tribe.
yeah.
So
Um, so what does she have up today or most recently? She's got a
she was doing daily Dems doing the work.
Yeah, so she does have that. That was like 3 hours ago. She has a thing from CNN, where I just like to bring attention to the fact that CNN felt the need to blur out the faces of the ICE agents. For the record, MSNBC did not do this. So, but she's got it. She's reposting a thing, and I absolutely agree with that. I'm sorry, that's just me. I mean, if you're I guess I can understand if you're working for ICE, and it's the same argument that people would try to use the same argument as how is it any different than the aides? Well, the aides that are working for my representative aren't storming into people's homes without warrants and hauling them off to
I
for
actually
deportation.
said to
So
somebody that they're snatching people off the street, and
yeah,
they laughed at me. And I'm like, okay, you got to quit watching Fox News.
I was at work and someone was trying to talk to me about something that was that was so asinine. And I go, well, you know what I'm really pissed off about? I'm really pissed off that the DOJ passed a memo down to ICE agents saying that they can enter homes without warrants. And he looked at me, he's like, did they really do that? I'm like, yeah. And he's like, why isn't anybody talking about it? And I go, it was in a USA Today article. And he just looked at me because I think he realized that he didn't have any fucking idea. And so I,
Honestly, this is the
yeah,
other, I think part of resistance is being informed, but I do understand that bandwidth matters. You
yeah.
and I each have our different, what I am lovingly call ostrich days. I used to call them stork days because I got confused.
And I told her whenever she used to say that, I'm like, I don't know what you mean, but
I know, he's like,
I understand
I
the
know what you're
premise. I
talking
get
about.
it. Like,
And so an ostrich day is when you put your head in the sand and you just don't pay attention to anything that's going on in the world. But even if you do it 2 or 3 times a week, you got part of resistance is knowing what's going on. So
mhm.
whatever you care about, at least try and know about that. So,
Yeah,
right, we've got to,
he's a MAGA like guy, so I know we gotta go. But so that was the only reason why I'm sure he didn't know.
you know what, when you can educate a MAGA light and you can say, I mean, I've done that with a few people and they're like, what? Wait, what?
Yeah,
Although then we end up with the MAGA heavy who are like, you can quote me the whole internet and I'm still not
I
gonna.
don't care. Yeah.
So, or the ones like Rush, who like I'm asking him for sources for the stuff he's posting. Like, I don't know if you saw the last one, but we got into a discussion and he's saying that COVID, the COVID vaccine wasn't really a vaccine. And I'm like, wow, I didn't know that. I'd love to know. I know, right? I'm like, so I thought, well, maybe if I change
Jeez.
my approach and I say, oh my gosh, I'd really like to read more about that. I think we'd all be more enlightened. We'd all be smarter. You know, can you share with me the sources that you have for that?
Still waiting, huh? Waiting so long the
Okay.
cricket emoji just started popping up in the chat with
I know
nobody sending it.
the cricket emoji's propagating in the corner.
Yeah.
Anyway, all right. So
Yeah, I
David,
we
great
gotta
show.
go.
I love having this conversation. Of course, I love, talking with you every week
Yeah.
uh, and about all the things. And so happy belated Mother's Day to anybody who's watching this. And
And to you as well. I know I already
I
sent you a message this morning, but I didn't actually say it while we're on call, so
know this is a great way to celebrate Mother's Day, though.
that, I was thinking about that too. I think it was this morning. Um, I guess Elizabeth, that's my wife. She was like, I was like, I think I'm just gonna text mom because we're gonna talk later. She goes, yeah, that's probably good. Just send her a message, like,
Right? I can't believe you
yeah.
didn't send me flowers all the way over here. How
I
rude.
know.
I know,
I
by
do
the time
my
I got here, they'd be dead.
what's the thing we've been saying? You just do the best you can.
Just do it again. All right, so we will post our wins on the Google Doc. We will have all these links to action items. You know, if there's something you want us to talk about, or if you have pushback to anything that we say, we love that. And so we certainly have had some people engaging who don't necessarily see things the way we do. And I like it. Okay, we're not looking for an echo chamber. So, all
Yeah.
right. Any closing thoughts, my dear son?
No. I'm glad that we talked about this topic. I think it's important for people to understand what those words, what those letters you keep hearing mean, and how they are implemented. Probably is probably more important. And I feel like we all come out a little smarter, and that's always good.
I do. I do. If you're not uncomfortable, you're not growing. So,
Yes.
all right. Well, friends, until we get together again, bye for now.